It may have an iffy reputation, generally speaking, but CGI is a valuable tool that can be used diligently to improve films by fixing technical issues and, of course, create images that simply can't be realized practically. It can also be used in ways that will burn themselves in your brain forevermore, as was the case with these recent movies. I'm Ewan, you're watching Whatculture, and here are just a few recent CGI movie moments you can't unsee. First up, de-aged Charlize Theron, The Old Guard 2. The Old Guard 2, Electric Avenue, was released to predominantly negative reviews, but on release weekend, pretty much the only thing anyone could talk about was the baffling digital de-aging job done on Charlize Theron. Now, to be clear, this isn't typical de-aging carried out to make an actor look younger for flashback scenes, but rather it was applied to Theron's face in present-day sequences at seemingly random intervals throughout the movie. What the hell? Well, many actors apparently have de-aging clauses written into their movie contracts nowadays, stipulating that they can have their wrinkles smoothed out in post-production, which, dear God, why can't we let humans be humans? In this case, the effect is aggressive and obvious to the point of just complete distraction. Subtle de-aging effects are basically invisible, but here it just looks like they used a naff faux nap filter to make Theron look younger, ironing out her face in a way that's completely uncanny and makes it hard to pay attention to anything she's actually doing on screen. Yeah, this is just all kinds of icky. There's no denying that Hollywood isn't a particularly welcoming place for middle-aged actresses, but in this instance, the CGI objectively was just not up to par. And it's baffling that Netflix let it out the door in such a blatantly unsatisfactory state. Next up, the dwarves, Snow White. After all the hemming and hawing over whether or not the live-action Snow White would actually feature the 7 dwarfs in source-accurate form, they do indeed appear in the film as one might expect. But rather than hire people with dwarfism to portray the iconic characters, Disney decided to reimagine the dwarves as CGI characters achieved through performance capture, a polarizing decision for several reasons, not least that these CGI renditions tumbled straight into that good old place we call the Uncanny Valley. In a manner not terribly dissimilar to the off-puttingly not quite there CGI in The Polar Express, dear God, I'm getting flashbacks again, there is an unsettling, even nightmarish quality to the dwarves in this movie. You can't really pass muster as believable entities despite the insane masses of money that were clearly spent on their creation. Given that the dwarves are a vital part of the Snow White story, it's perhaps little surprise that the film received mixed notices from critics and audiences alike, many feeling that Disney utterly whiffed its reinterpretation of its legendary characters. On the way, the PS3 car chase, Havoc. Havoc is the new action film from the Raid director Gareth Evans, and so naturally invited expectations that it would be another gut-wrenchingly visceral thriller with a sure emphasis on practical action sequences achieved largely in camera. But no, the movie instead kicks off with a head-scratcher of a car chase that appears to be almost entirely CGI, save for the actors who've clearly been green-screened into what looks like a middling Unreal Engine game demo from about, 15 years ago. We're talking, retro Gears of War vibes here. And also, I'm sorry for everyone I've just aged by calling Gears of War retro. It's nearly 20 years old now, guys. We're getting old. Existential aging crises aside, the cars don't move in a way that's at all believable, ensuring that Havoc kicks off looking like a not particularly good video game, and considering the generally disappointing quality of the movie overall, it doesn't get a whole lot better from there. Not to instill anxiety in you for all your upcoming social interactions, but first impressions are kind of a big deal, and this goopy, gamey opening car chase made it immediately clear that Evans wasn't serving up another Raid tier banger. Instantly making the audience question the integrity of your action when your entire brand is action just isn't the way to go. The worst movie of 2025 now, basically everything. War of the Worlds. The new Screen Life take on War of the Worlds is easily the worst film of the year so far, and one of the worst of any year, really. Beyond being inept on a most fundamental filmmaking level, it's also filled to the brim with atrociously subpar CGI. A big problem for a movie centered around a, alien invasion. Now, it doesn't help that the film's redesigned versions of the iconic tripods look thunderously generic, but in terms of pure visual fidelity, they had their chops licked by other sci-fi movies released decades ago. The aliens here look like something you might superimpose over a photo on a free phone app, not expect to make the grade in a real Hollywood movie produced by Universal. So you know that meme where it's the Universal theme, but it's the really cursed trumpets? That's War of the Worlds, that's the energy it has. So yeah, an entire 5 years passed between principal photography and the film's eventual release, and the CGI ended up looking like this is positively shambolic. Next up, a little bundle of movie joy. Baby Joey, Superman. As this list will categorically prove, CGI babies are a tough nut to crack. But at least in the case of James Gunn's Superman, said baby is supposed to be a bit freaky deaky. After all, young baby Joey is the son of mutant metahuman Metamorpho, played by Anthony Carrigan, so why would he ever look like a quote-unquote normal person? Instead, Joey is an adorably ugly little guy who never once passes the sniff test CGI-wise. He looks like a video game character, and yet, courtesy of that typical James Gunn magic, we still can't help but just care for the little fella. He's just so cute. Oh, I love him. The whole Superman rescues a weird baby subplot is definitely one of the movie's more divisive elements, I guess, but there was never any chance that Gunn was going to cover an actual baby in paint and prosthetics, so this was probably a best case scenario, all things considered. And as CGI babies and superhero movies go, Superman passed with flying colors compared to the other film we'll be talking about shortly. On the way, a dodgy deer herd, 28 years later. While the 28 Days Later series has only superficial similarities to The Walking Dead, it's interesting that both post-apocalyptic horror franchises struggled with serving up convincing CGI deer. Though Danny Boyle's recent horror sequel doesn't rely too much on complex VFX, more just complex practical effect singular, if you know, you know, there is one brief sequence that sticks out like a sore thumb. When young Spikey, played by Alfie Williams, and his father Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, reach the top of a lush hill while out hunting. The pair witness a large herd of deer running across the hill, but said deer are an extremely unpersuasive gaggle of low-rent CG, where everything from their basic movements to the shadows they cast on the ground look incredibly fake. To make matters worse, Spike and Jamie comment on how amazing it is to see the quote-unquote beautiful deer, a potentially affecting moment that's entirely undercut by just how janky the effects are. While doing this practically was surely out of the question, the scene clearly needed a little more post-production TLC before it was ready to come out the oven. Next up, just when you thought it was safe to drive behind a log truck, Stefani and Charlie get logged. Final Destination: Bloodlines. The Final Destination movies have never been great in the CGI department, and the recent Final Destination Bloodlines is sadly no exception. While the otherwise spectacular opening premonition sequence offers up its fair share of dodgy-looking visual effects, the worst of the CGI is undeniably saved at the very end of the movie. In the final scene, survivor Stefani, played by Caitlin Santajuana, and her brother Charlie, played by Teo Briones, find out that, shocker, they haven't in fact averted death's plan at all, at which point they're swiftly killed when a train derailment launches logs in their direction. Now, the derailing train is itself a blurry mess of lackluster CG, but the logs fly through the air like pure Looney Tunes, and the gory remnants of Stefani and Charlie look more like Kool-Aid splashing around than actual human detritus. And also on that Looney Tunes point, I feel like we need like a Mel Blanc scream going on here. The whole, ah, that kind of thing. Or when, like, Tom and Jerry, when Tom gets hit and he goes, ah, something like that. Just get it in there. More Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes adjacent stuff in Final Destination, please. I don't know why I'm doing this. It's me putting it into the movie. Get it in there, please. Maybe even a Looney Tunes parody of Final Destination? Looney Tunes pitches aside, it's hardly a new crime for a Final Destination movie to commit, and possibly a result of the film's ending being reshot late in the day, but it is nevertheless a butt-ugly note for an otherwise surprisingly solid franchise entry to go out on. What the hell is even that? The giant assault rifle. Weapons. One of the most bizarre and unforgettable moments in Zach Cregger's Weapons, and boy golly there are a lot of them, is the dream sequence where Josh Brolin's Archer sees his missing son Matthew, played by Luke Speakman, run away and into a house in the suburban neighborhood they call home. After a beat, a gigantic assault rifle materializes above the house with 217 emblazoned on it, the very same time the missing children all left their houses and vanished into the night. It's an extremely strange and surreal moment, and one that Cregger has refused to explain in press interviews, which you gotta respect. It's great when directors don't go out of their way to over-explain every little component of their movies, so good job on you there. I'm happy about that. And there are multiple theories here. Some might interpret it as a rather heavy-handed nod towards the epidemic of gun violence in the United States, while it could simply be a visualization of the fact that the missing children are being enchanted by Witch Gladys, and they can be quite literally used as weapons. Either way, it's a visual that's both incredibly striking and profoundly odd. Jarring in the moment, but less so once the film has had time to sink in. And yeah, what a great picture. I love weapons. Next up, the unicorns. Death of a Unicorn. Death of a Unicorn is an unfortunate case of a movie with a really fun concept that just couldn't quite deliver on said concept's full potential. A horror comedy in which vengeful unicorns murder the wealthy elites who sought to exploit them? I'm down, but there's a fundamental issue with the film beyond its underwhelming script, and it's that the unicorns themselves look, well, bad. Pretty bad. There's a distinct 2000s era look to these not convincing enough creatures, and we aren't talking like charming Scooby-Doo CGI here. Every time they move or do much of anything, it's tough not to notice how blatantly floaty, low-res, and just downright goofy looking they are. Now, to be completely fair to the production, it was made on a mere $15 million budget, and the said unicorns are featured extensively throughout the film's 107-minute runtime. But even so, considering they're the main selling point of the movie, it's a fatal flaw that they look so goddamn unimpressive. Like, if you're gonna have a unicorn in your movie, that thing needs to look majestic and beautiful, not like it's meant to be in an advert for like some really bad generic off-brand American cereal that'll rot your insides, because that's what they are. They're just bad. Thanks for the nightmare fuel, de-aged Adam Sandler. Happy Gilmore 2. Happy Gilmore 2 may have been a surprisingly not awful belated comedy sequel, but it definitely got off to a rough start with an opening montage intended to bring the audience up to speed on Happy's life over the last 30 years. This sequence naturally features Happy at a much younger age, including an otherwise amusing gag where he shoots a commercial for Trojan condoms after having 4 kids in 4 years. Except it's tough not to be distracted by the absolutely atrocious de-aging CGI applied to Adam Sandler's face here. Enough that it makes the whole Charlize Theron gate moment in The Old Guard 2 look both subtle and elegant. Sandler's face has a plastic, rubbery sheen to it, which combined with the slightly off look of his eyes, makes him seem like a soulless deepfake rather than something Adam Sandler actually had any involvement in shooting himself. We see this de-aged Happy show up several times throughout the sequence, and it's absolutely nightmarish every single time. Like, we're talking sleep paralysis demon moment here. And again, maybe you're fortunate if your sleep paralysis demon is just a de-aged Adam Sandler, but that's still pretty terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. Gonna make love to ya, baby? Question mark? Two become one, together. The terrific new body horror film Together is queasy and unsettling entirely by design. As a couple, Millie and Tim, played by real-life couple Alison Brie and Dave Franco, find themselves being physically drawn together by a mysterious force. By the end of the film, the pair resign themselves to their fate, appreciating that there's seemingly no way to avoid being fused together without one of them dying. And so, they romantically slow dance to the Spice Girls' anthemic Two Become One, while allowing the force to do its thing, causing their bodies to grotesquely meld together. I'm trying this is interpretive dance. This is what's happening. They go, that's what happens in the movie. I'm stuck. Naturally, the sequence employs extensive VFX work, and while it's not remotely gory, seeing two human bodies be contorted together in such a fashion is still plenty nauseating all the same, not gonna lie. Though some were left disappointed that Together didn't reach the gnarly heights of the Substance, the actual aesthetic design of the merging sequence, which looks painful as all hell, goddamn, well, it's brilliantly executed. Next up, Pleakley, Lilo and Stitch. The recent live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch was originally intended to release directly on Disney+, and so it was budgeted at a more modest $100 million, roughly half the price tag of your average theatrically released Disney remake. But the Mouse House ultimately decided to pivot Lilo and Stitch to a full theatrical bow. A smart decision, one could argue, given that it ended up grossing over $1 billion globally. Somehow. But that hemmed-in budget did result in some concessions, such as the decision to have Jumba, played by Zach Galifianakis, and Pleakley, played by Billy Magnussen, appear in human disguises for most of the film, ensuring they didn't need to be rendered with CGI every time they appeared on screen. Yet, even the brief times we do see them in their traditional forms, it's not great, especially Pleakley, who looks like a rough sketch of his prior 2D animated self. And again, just a reminder, you could just watch the original animated movie, which is better and good. Why are we still doing these? Obligatory live-action Disney remake rant aside, despite how tactile and amazing Stitch looks here, Pleakley appears oddly plastic and lifeless by comparison. Next up, CGI fireworks, F1. F1 is a technically astonishing racing movie delivered with expert skill by Top Gun Maverick filmmaker Joseph Kosinski. So it's actually pretty hilarious that the worst visual effect in the entire film is so trivial. Right at the end of the movie, when Sonny, Brad Pitt, wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the celebration is accompanied by an elaborate fireworks display in the distance, adding some welcome pomp to the triumphant scene, at least in theory, because in reality, it just doesn't look good. The fireworks are seriously so strange and fake looking. The lighting doesn't match the foreground, and the exact same firework patterns are repeated a little too often, making it look like a screensaver on Windows 96 and not the work of a $300 million blockbuster. Considering the state-of-the-art VFX used throughout the film otherwise to accentuate its white-knuckle racing sequences, it's wild that the most distractingly bad CG is of something as simple as fireworks. Next up, Uncanny Franklin Richards, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. The extensive CGI featured throughout the Fantastic Four: First Steps is mostly very good, but it all falls apart when it comes to the most difficult thing to get right: CGI baby, of course. Though several real babies were used to portray Sue Storm and Reed Richards' son Franklin, there are obviously limitations on how babies can be used in such a complex shoot, both in terms of logistics and obviously safety. But despite how far VFX have come in 2025, First Steps proves once again that we're still miles away from perfecting lifelike CGI tots. That is to say that Franklin looks positively cursed in numerous shots throughout the film, rousing unpleasant memories of the uncanny CGI baby Renesmee from the Twilight franchise. Despite absolutely nailing the look of apparently more complex CGI characters like The Thing and Galactus, it's clear that fully convincing CGI babies are still firmly out of Hollywood's grasp. And so, the 4-year time jump at the end of the movie before we see Franklin again in Avengers Doomsday was most certainly well advised. Next up, the giant moon? A working man. David Ayer's new Jason Statham starring action romp A Working Man doesn't feature a ton of CGI throughout its runtime. But Ayer's one big artistic swing late in the day is... it's really distracting. When Statham's protagonist, Levin Cade, oh my god, that's such a good action dad movie name, but anyway, races to save his boss's kidnapped daughter, a periodically massive moon can be seen in the back of the frame throughout the entire sequence. While we know that telephoto camera lenses can enlarge the moon, the shots in question are generally on the wider end of the spectrum, and so this clearly doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And even taking optics out of the equation, it's still totally ridiculous looking, like the moon is on a collision course with Earth itself, and I don't know, maybe David Ayer's a big fan of Moonfall, maybe? People in Hollywood love to see that moon just go right out of the sky. All started with that goddamn Jimmy Stewart and It's a Wonderful Life. It's all been moon mania since. Moon conspiracies aside, one suspects that Ayer had a little more spare time in post-production than he expected and just decided to noodle around with this daft effect for the hell of it, even though it steals so much attention away from what's actually happening in the scene. Next up, a Chungus tier green screen moment. A Minecraft movie. Mixed reviews didn't stop a Minecraft movie being a stonking box office success, grossing almost $1 billion worldwide, nor did its resolutely, routinely horrible VFX work. I came out of that movie, and I'd seen things. Terrible things. Even though the film was unfairly mocked pre-release when a work print with unfinished CGI was leaked online, the final, polished product was still packed to the gills with positively revolting visual effects. A big part of the problem is that it's incredibly difficult to convincingly realize flesh and blood human Jack Black beings within the surreal, blocky world of Minecraft, which again, why not just do this as an animated movie like the Mario movie? Would have been so much better, probably. But even accepting the inherent limitations of the live-action form for Minecraft, it's obvious at almost all times that our leads are simply running around a green or blue-screened environment and effectively reacting to nothing. You can certainly argue that the art direction is also at fault here, ensuring there's a garish, off-putting clash between the organic and the cartoony digital elements in the movie, but yeah, either way, it's ugly as sin. But that didn't stop everyone on their uncle from heading out to go see it anyway. I hope the chicken jockey was worth it, you goddamn animals. Next up, Tucker Gets Eaten. Dangerous Animals. Sean Byrne's savage horror thriller Dangerous Animals quite sensibly pulls straight from Steven Spielberg's Jaws playbook by not showing the man-eating sharks very often throughout its runtime, turning the focus instead on serial killer Tucker, played by a brilliant Jai Courtney. It's an especially canny decision for a film with an evidently low budget, and yet the cracks do show ever so slightly during the movie's one big money shot right at the end. When Tucker is harpooned into the ocean by hero Zephyr, played by Hassie Harrison, and swiftly devoured by a great white shark, the cathartic joy of the moment is somewhat undermined by the rather poor VFX rendition of the guy's demise. The CGI shark looks great. Fashionable, he's owning that runway, he's in his element, it's great. But Tucker resembles a mannequin with Courtney's face crudely pasted onto it by a bored guy working a Friday afternoon. He just wants to clock off and go home, but he's got to do this goddamn shark CG sequence, and he's asking himself, why didn't they just get a dummy or a model to do this? Why does it have to be CG? Oh my god, I hate this so much. And it's in the movie. It all shows in the movie. It's not good. Thankfully though, the film is great enough to overcome this one moment, but it's a shame that Tucker's death is robbed of some of its glory due to subpar effects work. Like, bring back the cool, goopy physical specimens. We need them. They're great, they work for a reason. There's no need for this to be CG. Next up, more CGI vehicles. Ice Road Vengeance. Liam Neeson's action sequel Ice Road Vengeance was widely panned for many reasons. Not least its regularly woeful VFX vehicles, which for a film centered around, feature-length car chases, is pretty much the kiss of death. It's like giving it, it's like Michael in The Godfather Part 2, and Fredo's right there, but Michael is this bad CGI and Fredo's the movie. Oh god, these trucks are really bad. But yeah, the exterior shots of the bus during its trek towards Mount Everest regularly look like a cutscene from a PS3 game. Embarrassingly low res and tossed off for any Hollywood movie of pretty much any budget releasing in 2025. Beyond the low fidelity of the vehicular models themselves, the physics also feel totally off, particularly whenever they're navigating tricky terrain or interacting with other motors. Hell, 50 years ago, William Friedkin went into the jungles of the Amazon with a bunch of big rigs and there was a big storm, and he put those trucks there. They were actually there in Sorcerer. I'm not expecting the same level of commitment and detail in an Ice Road sequel starring Liam Neeson, but come on. We used to put trucks in places. Put trucks in places again. Hashtag trucks in places 2025. Let's make this a movement. But yeah, the worst moment in the movie comes when the hero's tour bus smashes a car full of villains off a cliff edge near the end. And it's almost impossible not to either laugh or wince at how totally unacceptable it looks for a movie of this production size. Granted, the entire movie basically looks as artificial as a Super Bowl commercial, but it's never more appalling to behold than when the wheels are turning. Next up, Blake Lively kisses herself. Another simple favor. Another simple favor rather amusingly attempted to one-up the original film by revealing that Emily's apparently dead identical triplet, Charity, both played by Blake Lively, obviously, is actually still alive. Our audiences might expect some fun interactions as Blake Lively gets to act opposite herself. Things go in a much stranger and tougher to shake direction than that. It gets incesty. You didn't see that coming when you clicked on this list. During one sequence, we see Charity drug Emily and take her place in her wedding. But before the nuptials, Charity also forces herself on a drugged Emily, touching and kissing her without her consent. While the film dances around the particulars of everything Charity does to Emily, it's an ambiguously sexual assault made all the more unnerving by the fact we're watching Blake Lively doing this to herself with the assistance of CGI. Because, of course, she doesn't have a twin, let alone a triplet in real life, but overall, the whole sequence is just really, really weird. The entire subplot and the film's glossing over of it didn't go down well with plenty of viewers, and yeah, just weird. On the way, video game Rami Malek, Until Dawn. The recent adaptation of hit video game Until Dawn wasn't great, but at least it delivered some gnarly kills and touted a fun-ish time loop gimmick. Even with an emphasis on practical gore, the digital embellishments mostly looked rock solid, And in fact, the single moment of jarring CGI probably isn't what you think it is. So, near the end of the movie, protagonist Clover, played by Ella Rubin, finds a file on the desk of psychologist Dr. Hill, played by the always wonderful Peter Stormare, for one of his patients, Joshua Washington. Who's that, I hear you ask? Well, if you remembered playing Until Dawn back in 2015, I think Joshua Washington was a character from that game, played by a pre-Oscar Rami Malek, and hilariously, Joshua's file simply contains a screen grab from the game rather than, you know, an actual photo of Rami Malek. It's really funny. It's just, there he is from the game. He's just in the movie. Cool. I'm guessing this was because Sony already had the rights to Malek's likeness in the game and would need to pay / awkwardly bother him again for a live-action photo, which he may well have not been interested in doing. All the same, it's hilarious to see an obvious video game screenshot included in an otherwise purely live-action movie. It's just yeah, I'm kind of happy it's there. It's a quick enough glimpse of Josh that it'll probably pass muster for many people watching, but it's also very clearly not a photo of an actual human guy. So, yeah, there you go. Just gotta love bad CGI, right?